Okay, well, with that said, I'll call to order the special common council meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 29th, and the time is 5:30 p.m. I'll ask the clerk, Joanne Marcon, to call the roll.
Mayor Kim Smith,
Here.
Tom Smith,
Here.
Leanne Stokes,
Here.
Dan Stevens,
Here.
Diane Wolf,
Here.
Stephen Knott,
Here.
Larry Jurassic.
Here.
Okay, item 2 on the agenda is public input. This is the time. If you would like to address the common council, you may do so. Please begin by stating your name and your address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Would anyone like to address the common council this evening? Second call for anyone who would like to address the common council under public input this evening. This is the third and final call. If anyone would like to offer anything under public input today. I don't see or hear anyone, so we'll continue with consideration and possible action on the following items. Item number 3 is the acceptance of the Omni Center logo. Is there going to be a presentation to start with? Okay, so we'll start with that. Welcome.
Thank you. First up, the Omni Center logo that has been selected. We're going to share that with you today, and then we're going to turn to the City of Onalaska logo and go through a little more discussion around that one. But for the Omni Center,
Why don't you start by introducing yourself?
okay, I'm Kirsten Boudreau with Meter Agency.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we'll unveil the logo. This is the logo that has been selected for the Omni Center. And as you probably recall, we did a lot of research into this logo work. And what we found through that research was that the Omni Center was really perceived to be a building of beauty and strength. So we have a hero image of the Omni Center in the logo. And it's also an all-purpose facility. So we very deliberately emphasized the breadth and magnitude of the building, and even in the font styling, to really convey that it is a all-purpose facility. Our next step in this process then will be to build out this brand. So we'll add additional visual elements, photography recommendations, fonts, graphics, which will all convey the overarching brand message of the Omni Center. Do you want to add anything, Justin?
So this brand does play off of the Onalaska brand, which we are going to show you the logo direction we have established there too as well. So we have a little bit more background that we're going to give about that branding process. So a lot of that information will play into this as well, but this was a little bit more of a decisive direction. There was a very, I guess, strong feeling that this was the direction we wanted to take in depicting the building in the logo. So we're going to talk a little bit more again in depth about the Onalaska logo direction that we're sharing tonight. But yeah, that's the detail of the Omni Center direction.
And just for a little bit of history, there was a committee specific to the Omni Center that considered a variety of logos, narrowed them down, gave feedback, direction. That was then narrowed down to the 2 that are attached to this document. And this one received kind of an overwhelming response from that committee, which did include individuals that are users of the facility, Explore Lacrosse members, staff members. And so it was a pretty well-rounded, there was an individual from Park and Rec on there. It was a pretty, we felt well-rounded committee to represent kind of the various users and interests of the Omni Center and really who this logo would be targeted at.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the counselors? start with Larry Jurassic.
Yeah, I've talked to several people about this issue. They are confused why Alaska was not named on it.
So the name of the building is the Omni Center. Generally speaking, most buildings don't have the city associated with them. I know the La Crosse Center is a little bit unusual in that that is the name of the building, but when we talk about the KI Center or the Alliance Center, generally speaking, it's not the Green Bay KI Center or the Madison Alliance Center. While it is the Omni Center in the city of Onalaska, when people talk about it, we don't talk about it as the Onalaska Omni Center, we talk about it as the Omni Center. And so I think it would be unusual to include the name, but I'll defer to Kirsten.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Okay, thank you. We'll just keep coming this way, Dan, and then we'll go to Leanne, and then we'll just.
Sure. I guess maybe to respond to Alder Jurassic's point, and I thought about this last night when it was discussed with the Parks Board. Remember, the Omni Center is a enterprise fund, and we don't want to make it inclusive or exclusive where it's just Onalaskans. We want people coming from all over. And I think if we incorporated the name Onalaska Omni Center into it, it makes it so other people are kind of coming into foreign ground. We want people from a wider variety of the region within 60 miles. We want them to come here, and we want them to stay in our hotels, and we want them to pay room tax and go to our restaurants. So in this case, I would think it's better to leave Onalaska out of the picture. A few other notes that I have, there's a couple things when I think of with the Omni Center. First and foremost is it's probably the preeminent place in the Coulee region where people play hockey. And when I think of hockey, I think of that light blue color for if I were a 3-year-old and I were coloring ice. So I like that light blue is incorporated as, in the winter, that's where most of the revenue comes into the Omni Center. The other thing that I think of and is missing from this is with the Omni Center, you get the big dome, and we have the kind of the front door, the front entrance. I'm not sure how they would do that, but if they would have had a little maybe silhouette in the back or something like that, if I were flying into the La Crosse airport and you could readily identify the Omni Center by the big round dome. In fact, I think we should paint "Welcome to Onalaska" on top of that. So I guess that's my thoughts. Between the logos that were available for the Omni Center, the ones that I've seen, this one I prefer. I'm not sure if I like it with the Omni Center offset or center offset or right underneath. But I guess I will leave it at that. So that's my 2 cents.
They both are official logos. They both would be used in different situations. So the one on the left would be the horizontal orientation. If at the top of a website, you needed the logo to be shorter and elongated, that would be the logo that would be used. Whereas in other situations, you do have more vertical space, the one on the right would be used. So logos do usually come in those 2 orientations. So they would both be the logo.
I'm sorry, if I can add on one more point with the Omni Center in the past, there was some question if that was Omni Center was 1 word or 2 words. Are we officially making a definitive Omni Center is 2 different words?
Correct.
And if not, we should codify that, but all right, thank you.
Yep. There's also going to be, with the whole brand standards that we're establishing for both the brands of the Omni Center and Onalaska, there will be things established, like we are recommending that Omni always be uppercase and Center be capitalized, but not. That is something that is still, those decisions will be finalized and set in stone so that there is a consistent use across all in all appearances of the word Omni Center.
Okay, thank you for that, Leanne.
Just wanted to make a note that this was talked about at the Park and Rec meeting last night and was approved there. So I just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to Tom. Stephen will do you where your seat is. So after Diane, if you're waiting for your turn. Tom is gonna go now.
Okay, thank you.
I would just say that I support this one. I like this one. And I was part of the original committee that was when we were doing the Zoom part of it. And I do like the idea because of the structure and making it like a building. So, and the ice, I think that really stands out as the blue. So I think this is a good one. So I really support this one. I think it's a good one.
Thank you. Diane?
I know I received some emails about this and I think I passed them on to everyone when I have received them. Certainly don't like the second one. A few comments I've heard, is were we given a really good one and a really bad one? So it was obvious that we picked the first one. Just passing that along. I will be very pleased when we finally land on and we finalize 2 words. So where you can be consistent throughout. Oh, I know I have something else. Just to review again, who were the people? Because I'm going to ask this also when we get to the city logo. I think Dan Wick said last night it was Justin, Courtney, Dan, Jonathan, and someone from the La Crosse Visitors Bureau. May I ask who that person was? Oh, yep. Great, thank you. How many logos were in serious consideration, or I should say, how many did you was started with to narrow it down to the 2?
We started with 3, and then we took the 3. They went back to the drawing boards to come back with 3, 2 of which you see right here before you.
Dan, for transcription purposes, would you say again who Haley was and who she's with?
Yeah, Haley Doyle is with Explore Lacrosse. I believe she's the director of marketing for Explore Lacrosse.
So was Tom Smith on the committee?
Tom Smith was on the City Hall one, which you'll be talking about at the.
Okay, I thought when he said that, I was like, he was on both? So you didn't have anybody from the council?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen?
Yes, real briefly, first off, I do like concept 1. To me, the great strength in it is its simplicity. I think that it's recognizable as to what it's supposed to represent. Very interesting that I had the same impression that Dan did, you know, that basically it was like representing water and ice, but it doesn't sound like that was intended. But I think that it's very good to, it's a good image to reflect what it's supposed to do. It's nice and simple.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there anything staff would like to add or comment on? Okay, so I'll turn back to the council if there's any other questions, comments, or if someone would like to make a motion. Alder Wolf?
Thank you, Your Honor. So, and so Dan, could you just talk a little bit about if it's accepted tonight, what is the anticipated rollout? Because I know we have our 30th anniversary next year.
Yeah, 2023 will be our 30th anniversary. There's still quite a bit of work to do with Meter, you know, the branding and things like that. So, you know, it's critical for us to get the approval so that we can work on the next steps of, you know, I guess I don't have
Finalizing the fonts, finalizing the color guide. There will be some tag sayings and some elements that will go with this for staff to utilize moving forward. But in order to proceed with those, we need the final main concept approved.
So this could change in some ways.
I mean, not necessarily unless that's the direction you're asking for tonight. What it would be expanded upon. So this is one piece of a final brand guide, which will give staff the direction as to, you know, what fonts they should use, what colors. You know, there may be an expanded color palette. There may be different variations, you know, like you're seeing orientation versions here. You know, there may be some elements that could be pieced out separately. There may be a time where you would use the building, but not the words, or, you know, different pieces. Again, looking at potentially having a tagline, and then they're also looking at doing some additional new marketing with these with these new logo and brand concepts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Council? Anything else?
Just like to add, if people don't know Haley Doyle with Explore Lacrosse is she does a lot of their marketing. It's this type of stuff, and she's done some really good work for Explore Lacrosse. So that's a good person to have on the committee. So not just throwing a name up.
And that's
I have
Steven?
one other question too. Yes,
Sure.
please. Just probably reading something into it, but on the left side of the image, the white portion, is that supposed to look like a sail?
No, the left, it's intended to create the visual effect of a shadow, the left side.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, council?
So I'll make a motion that we approve, I guess we're calling this concept one. I would like the caveat that if changes are made, that it goes back to council for a final approval.
I second that.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor by Dan Stevens. It's been seconded by Leanne Stokes to approve concept one with the understanding that if it were to change, that would come back to common council. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We will move on to the city logo. If you'd like to introduce that topic.
So before we jump into the logo, I'm just going to do a quick review of the research step. So just to remind everyone, we did conduct pretty extensive research into this logo. We distributed surveys, we attended community events, we held some community input sessions, and all told, we had feedback from 811 people from the community and had a strong representation of age, gender, and other demographics. So the key themes that bubbled to the surface of the research, the perception that the community has of Onalaska is that it's energetic, vibrant, and fresh. Also, families and shopping and restaurants came up repeatedly. We also heard that Onalaska is really described as the hub of the area in many ways. It has more retail and franchise locations and restaurants and shopping than most other communities around the area, even in some ways, La Crosse. And then being that it's a place for so many young and growing families, that also makes it a type of hub. We heard through the research that, of course, the beauty of our area, the nature and the river, colloquially called the lake, are valued, but not necessarily a competitive advantage. So that is also part of La Crosse, Holmen, Trempealeau, Winona, La Crescent. So not a unique differentiator. We also found that commitment to current brand symbols in the community is really quite low. Awareness of Sunny the Sunfish was quite low. And the color purple, which is associated with the high school, it's not necessarily carried over into the brand recognition and the symbols that were tested against a variety of symbols in the community. So our recommendation was that we did not need to pull those two elements into the brand. So Justin's going to take us through the rest.
Yeah, so before we got into the logo development process, we did have a number of visual recommendations that we brought to the group to make sure everything was headed in the right direction. So we did ultimately decide that the color purple, like Kirsten mentioned, wasn't necessarily, didn't need to be at the center of the brand, but we did determine that it could carry forward in different facets of the brand in some, to some capacity. But we did need to expand the color palette to include vibrant, youthful, and bright complementary colors. So really amping up the color of the brand. Currently, besides the use of purple, there isn't really a color palette for the city. And that we needed to develop a highly flexible mark to really work with the different departments and different parts of the community. So really be a flexible word mark that we could use in a lot of different ways. Like Kirsten mentioned, the fresh, vibrant, youthful mood of the city was a key part of the brand development. So again, really a logo and a brand that reflects that. So we also had recommendations related to font. So something clean, geometric, sans serif, something to really modernize the brand. And then as part of this brand development, we are making photo and video recommendations that reflect the community, the relationships, the fun vibe, and the lifestyle of Onalaska. So we are going way beyond a logo in this process, but of course, what we're talking about today is the logo, but we want to give you a full background of what's getting us to where we are. And Sunny, the sunfish, again, Kirsten mentioned that it's not something that needs to be at the center of the brand, but we don't want to get rid of the sunfish. So it still is part of the brand moving forward, but what degree that is yet to be determined, but we don't want to necessarily get rid of it. The same can be said for the current logo right now. That is becoming a seal in this strategy. It is not something that's getting completely replaced. It is just something that is used in a different capacity than the logo of the city. So anytime we're creating a brand, we start with brand themes and everything ties back to these themes. So this is really our guide for what we do in what we create in a brand. So really important in the development of a logo that we keep asking ourselves if we're successfully tying back to these themes. So the themes we established for Onalaska were connection, growth, energy, the idea that Onalaska is a hub of the region, fun and vibrant. So these are the 6 themes driving our decisions throughout this process. And then our brand position, to really sum it up, a vibrant, growing community, families of all kinds call home. So now to get into the design that we did land on. So really explaining the different pieces of this mark. So the buildings are a depiction of important structures in the city. So specifically Great River Landing and the buildings of City Hall, also a pretty loose representation that depicts Main Street in general, but specifically taking inspiration from this building. The bright orange sky communicates hope while hinting the shape of an O behind the buildings. So really working in a more subtle O shape behind the buildings on the horizon. And then the blue represents the lake and the river, and the green represents the hills and the bluffs of the city. And again, really touching on those themes of connection, growth, hub, and the vibrancy with the colors. So in some executions, just as an example, so these are very preliminary at this point. The logo is what we're getting locked in on, but we really, to show what a logo can look like, we feel like these executions are very important. So you can see how that logo could look in a execution. Here, a letterhead and a business card. And then banner with placeholder text, but then also working in the key shapes of the logo to some photography you can see there on the bottom left, and really playing in the different elements of the logo throughout different executions. So I will, well, I guess the quick touch on next steps. So we do need to, determine that this is the final direction of the logo, or this is the final logo. But then locking in the color palette is a next step. This is the direction of the color palette, but some, the full palette, there's usually up to 7 different colors that are within a palette. And there's obviously not that many colors in the logo. So there's often colors beyond the logo. Those will be finalized, the tagline finalized, and a brand launch plan, and then the full brand standards and brand collateral, final brand collateral. So I'll pull the logo back up. Take another look.
Okay, so are there any questions or comments from staff? Maybe we'll go the opposite direction. Stephen, did you have any comments or questions?
Yes, I have several. Thank you. So first off, I have a question to the contractor. Did you all consider the city mission when developing this? Because the one thing I'm missing, for instance, is family.
Sorry, what did you say is missing? Family?
Family. Yeah, that's at the very front of our mission statement.
Yeah, I mean, we do feel like the logo depicts the energy and vibe of Onalaska. I guess we need to remember too that we have established all the themes. Not everything will reflect all themes, so it is, pretty hard to literally depict family in the theme or in the logo. Where we usually tie in things like that is through photography and our copy and, the photos that we show within the brand and I guess other elements of the brand. To literally depict family in a logo, you need to probably actually show, people in a logo, which gets a little bit difficult.
Okay, and then a couple of other comments. So I understand what all these colors symbolize, but only because I'm looking at it on paper and I've heard you tell me. Whereas the Omni Center, it was very clear, that represents the Omni Center. It's very simple. This is the opposite of simple to me. It's very complicated. And my first take on it before I saw the descriptors was, to me, it just looked like a rainbow. It was missing the red and the indigo. I got it. But, my first thought was a farmhouse in Kansas. and I just don't, personally, I don't see that this actually does a real good representation for us. It's just too complicated. And I know you'd said that you built the Omni Center logo off of this, but I don't see that either. Yeah, I just don't think there's any way anyone can look at this and understand what it means without a detailed description.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Well, we can come
Thank you.
back. Diane?
Thank you. I know that is that's what Alder not just said. That's the feedback that I've been getting from the public. Is they would not have understood, but that they didn't have a legend to guide them. I didn't either. I mean, I do see the connect between the Omni Center logo and this logo. When I think of the Omni Center logo that we just approved, for me personally, I can see where that would be timeless. I don't know if this would be timeless. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't be, I just don't know if it is. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. And I really don't like that swirly L and the K, but I know that's just a personal thing for me. So, and I know there's other variations, whatever, but I'm going to sit back and listen to what everyone else has to say before I decide to add anything else. But I will want to know eventually who also sat on this committee before we're done. Thank you.
Sure. Tom?
Yeah, this one I struggle with both of them actually. These were not one of my favorites. The concept 2 here, to me is too busy. It is just too much. The concept 2 for the city. And it reminds me a lot of the Omni Center. I mean, there's a lot of similarities, kind of like the buildings, except this one has a lot more colors and curvy things under it. So I like the simplicity of the Omni Center one better. So I like the Omni Center one. That one I like. This one to me, especially when you see it with brochures and stuff, it just seems so busy. And like Steve said, if you don't know what the definition of all these blue lines and green lines and stuff are, you kind of get lost in it. So I'm not too crazy about concept 2. It's just too busy. I do like the concept of kind of the buildings in a way, like concept of the Omni Center. But my thought originally was, when you go down Main Street and you see our city hall and you see the Onalaska with the kind of the semicircle on the front of Main Street, it says Onalaska and it kind of cruises around the front of it. Seeing a building like that on this with the kind of where that curve is, where the like part the O with like the Onalaska, to me would tell me, oh, this is Onalaska, and give it a little bit more of an identity to Onalaska. And I know we don't talk about putting the names in it, but just this one just seems too similar to the Omni Center and buildings, and it's just too busy. So I'm not crazy about concept 2. Concept 1, it's just a big O. And I get it from Onalaska, but I'm not crazy about that one either. So I like concept 2 better, but it's too busy, would have to be simplified in my.
Thank you. Leanne?
I went through both of them. Sorry, I went through both of them, concept 1 and concept 2. I think concept 1 is abstract and you can read into it what you want. And I know that was one of the comments, that people can read into what those actually mean. I personally like concept 2. I like the fact that it shows Great River Landing. I like the fact that it shows City Hall. I did not think about the yellow behind it being the beginning of an O until I read through it. I like the font of concept 2. So my choice right now would be concept 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Stevens?
Okay, so I have a few comments here. First, I don't know, and maybe that came in the community feedback, but out of the Cooley region, do we really consider ourselves the hub of the area? I don't know that I'd see that. I think that we're a more vibrant community. I would even say that we're the more, I'd say, preferred community to live in, because we, have good schools, we've got shopping and good businesses, and you're not going to break your axle driving down our roads. But I don't know that I see hub. So I guess I would disagree with that. And when I'm looking at this concept here, I did get the O, and I like that part, but the rest of it, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense. So, for example, the green that represents the bluffs, if this were accurate, that should be above the buildings, not below it. Otherwise, we would be built on top of the bluffs, and that's not Onalaska. And to that point, I think that there's nothing in this logo that actually, with the exception of that half O there, that really cries out Onalaska. If you were to take 100 people from the area and say, is this, is it La Crosse? Is it Fountain City? Is it Alma? Is it Trempealeau? Is it Prairie du Chien? And it could be any of them. There's nothing that says Onalaska. So if there's elements that are supposed to represent, for example, like Great River Landing, I don't see that there. I mean, if they had maybe a little thing with a sculpture or something, that might be something that people could identify. I don't know that I want to put Sonny the Sunfish on there, but something like a sunfish or that sculpture might give some people the ability to identify this with the city of Onalaska. And I don't see that. I think that if we are to have the color scheme, I think that there's merit to having it match the Omni Center logo. And that one, I think that we all kind of agreed on. So this could be too many colors, and maybe there's a way that could be pared down. And then to answer Alder Wolf, I know she didn't like that L, but actually I think that's supposed to be a wave. That's the water representing that. So I actually like that part. So between the two, I like this better than the other version. The circle, I saw that. People put some work into it. I'm sorry, but I do not like that at all. I think it's dizzying. The first thing I thought about was, there was a resident of the Onalaska when we were dealing with that Cooley, the Green Cooley roundabout, and he was complaining how we loved our European style roundabouts. And that's, it's like the city of Onalaska is pledging its eternal love to roundabouts. And I don't want to prove that guy right. I don't like the color scheme. We're more than just a big zero. And that one I would kick right out. So between the two, I like this one better. I think that there should be changes if we decide to go with that route. And I would say as a reminder, I don't know that we're obligated to pick a logo. We could say we could pass. And I don't know that we should pick a logo just because it's the best of what's presented. That's food for thought. So we're not under any obligation. And I think if we pick a logo, it should be something we all like and it makes sense and that the people of Onalaska would readily identify with. So those would be my thoughts.
Thank you. Larry Jurassic.
Thank you, Mayor. I talked to many people about this. And they pretty much all stated the same thing. Does that mean we're getting ready to sunny the fish, the statue? I said, no, that's part of the city. And that's what they said. That's right. That's part of the city. That's where we're recognized as. The logo that we have on the fish, all right, it's not the best fish around, but I think the design is a little bit more simplistic as far as what it represents the city of Onalaska. Simple, come and enjoy our city here and enjoy what it is. Even yesterday, when we received our city comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, page 7 stated what's city known for: fishing, ice, sunfish, fishing. So it's just another comment that I received was that, does this mean that in 5-6 years, we got to change it again because somebody doesn't like what they were talking about, the circle one? They didn't like that at all. But the one here, I couldn't find anybody that really enjoyed it. So that's my comments.
Okay, thank you for that, Larry.
Could I add one more?
He didn't find anybody that liked the circle one. That's what, right, Larry? That's what you said. Okay, we'll turn to staff. Amanda?
Yeah, just a couple things. I think, obviously, if the will of the council is not to accept one of these, I think that I would recommend that you give some strong direction to Meter and that they come back. We're pretty far down this process. And so this is something that we need to tackle and we need to finish. And so whatever that may look like, just to highlight a few things we began this process for kind of a multitude of reasons. One, we lack a lot of standardization across the city. We also have the sunfish, which, brands build recognition over time, right? Like you're not going to have an instant, feeling of connectedness to something you've never seen, no matter how much you think it might represent Onalaska. That's going to take time to establish through repetitive use, through imagery, through it being on our city website and through that. So I don't think we should go out into this expecting that everybody's going to feel connected with any one design moving forward. But our current, sunfish is not usable in a variety of ways. It's very detailed. It doesn't translate across mediums very well. We lack updated images of it. So when it was created, honestly, I'm not even sure that we have the original files it was created in, and it's been manipulated so many times over time that the files are difficult to use and difficult to translate into certain surfaces in certain mediums. And so I think that we also need to consider that that's a very detailed image, whereas this is a less detailed image. And I'm hearing that we want to encompass a lot of things in what is going to be a very small package, if that makes sense. And so I think if we are going to give them feedback, we should really try to agree to the extent possible on what our priorities are as far as kind of the features of Onalaska. We don't have a lot of geographic representation in the sense that there is not a particular bluff. We don't have a large bridge. You know, we lack some of those iconic objects that some cities are lucky to have. And so with that, how do we encompass Onalaska? You know, our surveys told us that we're vibrant, that we're youthful, that families love it for many of the reasons Dan mentioned. You know, they find that we have good schools. Well, but we don't want to identify as a school, right? Like that's not who we are. It's just a component of who we are. And so how do we translate this like youthful vibrancy into a logo? Because that's not something that, you know, you can capture in just one image. And so I think that it's a tricky solution. If I could have Meter show the original of concept one, if that's possible, I'd like to just take a moment to look at that. The circle.
Yeah, and I was gonna too, just kind of to piggyback while you look that up, to just talk for a minute about what Amanda was saying. I was on this committee. And granted, like I wasn't super big fan of either one of these designs either. It wasn't really until they started putting the design onto the different ways that it might be used and kind of pulling it apart that I could kind of start to visualize how it could work. And I think that that's kind of part of the problem is because we haven't used a symbol like this as part of our brand, that we have trouble envisioning what that will be like in the future. So it's different than what we've done in the past. It's not the same. So we don't have an affinity toward it, but we're counting on this firm to help us build a brand around the image. So we're just looking for a core symbol that they can work around, be it one or the other. I thought we were gonna wait till they could go unless.
A
it's
quick
urgent.
question.
Okay.
How long has that been out? I mean, when did they first bring out the brand? No, the old one.
The seal,
Yeah,
that's a seal.
the seal, yeah.
I have no idea.
That was developed when City Hall was built, when this building was built.
1998. 1998.
Oh, Dan?
At this point, it's, you know, what's past is past. I think it would have been constructive to involve at least somebody from council on the meeting. This is really the first chance that we as a body have had a chance to talk about this. So ultimately, it's like we're given, you know, two choices. We didn't have any impact on input or anything, and we're talking to constituents. And I think the logo is a matter of policy. I think that council should have been involved at a much earlier stage, and you know, or I don't think it would have been appropriate to just nix council out of the equation at all. But I mean, here we're kind of presented with, all right, this is what we got. You can choose this or you can choose this. I think there might have been other options, so it's a false dichotomy. And before we commit to a long-term logo, I think it's got to be something everybody here is on board with, not like we're just settling for something.
I will say the idea that everybody's going to like one logo in all my time in advertising, it never happens. I mean, you're going.
We all like the
everybody
Omni Center logo. We all approved it.
approved it, but if you had seen different logos, everybody would choose a different one. You know, and the idea that everybody being able to live with one logo, that's one thing, but the idea that everybody doesn't have the same style or taste. So, I mean, that's something that, and the Omni Center, I think, and there's a reason we presented less on the Omni Center. It's because I think it's a little less of a, you know, intense subject. There's a lot more feeling and emotion behind the city of Onalaska. So we kind of anticipated that people were going to have very strong feelings about it. So I'd say, I'd warn you against feeling like everybody's going to unanimously say like that's it. Everybody want, you know, one logo, but.
May I say something?
Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, as far as any guidance for me, I do like the direction concept 2 is going better than the concept 1, hands down. Again, not real happy with the final product here, so it needs to be reworked. And one of the things I thought that was real interesting that I hadn't even thought of was when Dan had mentioned that the bluffs are actually above the buildings. And that's something I'd like to have considered. But the direction of concept 2 is certainly more palatable if they were to maybe do a slight redesign. And I do feel bad. I know the meter folks worked very hard on this. You know, I'm not trying to, rain on anyone's parade here. I definitely appreciate the work. It's easy to tear down. It's much harder to build. And I know you guys are doing the building.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, Diane?
Thank you. So 2 questions. So first is the concept 1 that's now up on the screen. So this is one of the original ones.
So this was the original version that sort of led into what is before you today. And so one of the, and just to, I guess, provide some clarification. So we did have a committee. Alder Smith did sit on that. He was the council representative on that committee. The mayor also sat on that committee, as well as 3 staff members. Dan Wick, myself, and Katie Aspenson sat on that committee. We did also share designs, occasionally with staff as well. As you can see, it gets kind of tricky to portray bluffs or hills in the background behind buildings. And so some of the feedback that we gave Meter was, we didn't think that quite cut it. We also felt like buildings needed to be representative of buildings in Onalaska. These were meant to be representative of sort of downtown buildings. Like if you think of like the Mason building, they're kind of your more traditional downtown buildings. We wanted to go with something more iconic in Onalaska. Again, we don't have a lot of iconic buildings, so that didn't leave us with a lot of options. But I wanted to show this because it shows a little bit of how the process kind of played out and where we started and sort of where we ended up. This was a very literal O representation with the actual image being a circle. And so just kind of for comparison's sake, what I'm hearing is I think you'd like them to take another stab. And so, that is an option. I would like to defer to Kirsten and Justin for just a second, though. We did send this out to those 811 people that provided the initial feedback. And so I would like you to highlight kind of what we got back from the community when we sent those 2 options out.
Yeah, so we did get in a lot, about 82% of people did like option 2, which was the one that we're recommending here tonight. And then there was an opportunity for people to have comments. They did about 64% of those comments were positive about number 2, about 20-some% were neutral, and then there was about 20% that were negative. So we are not hearing an overwhelming negative response to that logo concept. So
which options were they given in the survey? This one and the one we have?
not this one. This is kind
The
of the
original 2 in your packet.
yeah.
Circle one?
Yep.
No wonder.
And a lot of people, the circle one wasn't the chosen one. About 20% of people did like that one over number 2, but the people who liked it a lot. They're 2 distinctly different directions in a logo. They're an abstract logo and a very literal logo. The Nike swoosh meant absolutely nothing when it was first created. Somebody probably saw that and said, I want to see a shoe in this logo, but it's not, it grew meaning over time and really created a strong brand connection because they owned that mark. An abstract mark can become your brand and really start to reflect your values. You start with nothing, but you do create that connection over time.
Okay, let's
process.
see. Let's go with Leanne.
Thank you. I think some of the differences is that's a pretty literal. When you look at it, that's
Seal.
very literal. And when you look at this, even option 2 is somewhat more abstract. And I think that sometimes maybe people, when you're jumping from something that's very literal to something that's abstract, maybe it takes some time to get used to it. But then again, Onalaska 20 years ago looked a lot different than Onalaska today looks. And just how much, you know, expansion we've had, how many more buildings we have and things like that. So I still go back to, I like concept 2. It's not as literal as I would like it, but then again, if it's literal, then it's not gonna, then you're gonna have to redo the whole thing if you're trying to change one piece of it. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. And what is, they're looking at the pointy top building with the clock is the Great River Landing. And then what were the other ones, Justin?
They are reminiscent of City Hall, but not, they're intended to be representative of more than that, but they are inspired by it.
Okay,
Go
so,
back to that one. Go back to that one, had the circle one that you started with.
Concept 1.
Yeah, first concept, because that's the one I really liked from the very beginning. And the whole reason why I liked it, because it was an O. I could see Onalaska right away just because of the O. But if we had the right buildings, which I know was the intent to do what we're doing with concept 2 there, is to find the buildings, but maybe find like the front of this building here with the curvy, or make it look like one of our buildings here, or well, we already have the Omni Center, but or you know, doing that kind of in a smaller version. And then taking some of these colors, which are in concept 2 anyhow, and putting them, still can be in the bottom, but I still think that gives you a nice snapshot of today's buildings, some river, some bluffs, and the O all in one, and keeps it simple.
and being on the committee, when I saw this one, like, I just was really put off by those buildings. To me, they're just buildings that don't mean anything. And they're the central point of it. And so that's what led us then to, and other people on the committee felt the same way. So that's what led,
Make these buildings.
that's what led to those buildings,
That's it
just
too,
to
yeah.
give you
Yeah,
like the
like I said,
background.
but if you
but,
put those
I
on.
mean,
this-
end of the day, I'm open to whatever
Yeah.
we all
I'm
decide.
just saying that if you put these buildings on that concept, you got.
It seems like the bluffs and the tree there in that really kind of are appealing.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I ask.
To me.
I'm just curious between council, how many people like 1 better than 2 what's proposed? I mean, I do.
What do you mean one?
You like those
Like
buildings?
this.
Yeah, this one, yeah.
Oh, with those buildings?
Tom has great feedback, and I think that we should build off of that. But versus the one that we're looking at, if we're calling that concept 2. I mean, maybe there's a way that you match the color scheme to the Omni Center logo and just kind of outline so it doesn't.
That's what I mean,
So
combine it somehow.
So clearly there's an O there, but then it has the bluffs above and make the buildings look a little bit more kind of like they're here. That might be a feat, you know, a designer feat. I'm not sure how difficult that would be to accomplish. That would be a little bit more appealing, I think.
Okay, let's not have side conversations and let's let Amanda say something.
Okay, so just to recap what I'm hearing, just by a head nod, is we kind of like to meld this concept 1 with the original concept 2 that we presented tonight. That we like some key components from each. We like more literal buildings that are more representative on Alaska. We do kind of like this O shape. The color schemes are very similar between both. Just to speak to the color schemes, to answer Dan, we don't want the same color scheme for both the Omni Center and for City Hall, because they are 2 distinct brands. We do want them to complement each other. So obviously that's not the case here, but the best example I could say is we don't want, you know, City Hall to be bright pink and then have like neutral tones at the Omni Center. That wouldn't work. We want them to be complementary, but not identical. Which I think, you know, with this color schemes presented, they've kind of done a good job of. But is that kind of a head nod? I don't know that we need a motion. We're not going to, it sounds like pick a logo tonight, and that's okay, but just a head nod that we'd like maybe some variations off of these 2 combined.
I'm not personally bought into any of it on concept 1. Just to me, it doesn't represent the city at all. It's confusing to me. Again, I compare it to the Omni Center and its simplicity. This is very, very confused.
Stephen,
Concept
I'm
2.
Can I interrupt you for just 1 second? Can you see our
Sure.
screen? Because the concept 1 we are showing is totally different than that circular wheel.
Oh, no, I don't. I'm on telephone.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm looking at, concept one with what I refer to as the rainbow. I know it's
Yep,
missing
you're-
red and indigo.
Disregard the rainbow. We will get this out to you in an email, but what it is it's a circular image with similar water at the bottom as concept two. Diane's gonna text it to you here. It's got some
Okay.
green, three buildings and then kind of like green hills and a sun behind it, but it's in a circular shape. And so when we are talking about a hybrid, we're talking about a hybrid of this kind of original version and the present version.
Idea of it. of buildings.
Okay, so,
That's sent to you quick if you want to just wait a second.
okay, so at this point, Kirsten or Justin, do you want to say any comments based on what you're hearing?
No, I think the fact that we're getting, that everybody can see that a version of a logo that is in this direction is something that we feel like can work is actually a pretty big step. So if we feel like we can, if everyone feels like we can take this direction, I mean, logos can be a lot of different things. It could be a word mark only, like Explore Lacrosse, that's just fonts. We did that logo, a while back. And, that works great for them, but there's no depiction of anything. It's just words, just two fonts. Or it can be an abstract symbol like the wheel that it is being referred to. Or we can do this depiction where it's literal, it's showing features of the city. It seems like, we did develop this direction because we felt like there was an appetite for that. And even deciding on that direction is a big step. That if everyone feels good about that, that narrows it down and gives us a lot to go on.
Okay, any other
I do
comments?
like the concept one that you just texted me much better than any of the others even. Although I think the buildings are too prominent.
Get the right buildings in there.
Okay, Alder Stevens?
If it, just to build off that, part of what I like about the present concept one, and if they can merge that in with concept two is that I think this better encapsulates nature. So I think when people think of Onalaska, yeah, we're a great community with the buildings, but we are in amongst nature. So you got the tree, you've got the water, you got the sun, and then you got the bluffs as the backdrop, not that we're sitting on top of them. The circle there as the sun, that could also be Onalaska, or with that hint of the sun. So I think there's a way that we can combine the two to make a better end product.
Do you need buildings? I'm just gonna throw this out there. We don't have buildings in our current logo. Do you need buildings?
The way that they're presented is, for me, I guess I'm only one of six. I don't mind having buildings. I'm okay with that, but I understand the feedback, and I understand as a designer, sometimes it's hard to get like the concept two buildings situated in a way that makes sense. But if they could pull it off, and I think that's what Alder Smith was suggesting, is kind of get those buildings somehow incorporated into the concept one logo. And then I think we'd have something that people might be more inclined to agree upon.
Like maybe if it was the arch part of City Hall and the clock tower of the Great River Landing.
Simple. Try it.
Yeah, I would actually almost be willing to commit to what is this new concept one, even right now, the more I look at it. The nice thing about having the buildings, now I'm looking at it more, is it accentuates that those are bluffs behind it. So if you remove the building, it'll just be more colors on top of each other. So, but again, those are good ideas with the clock tower and the arch too. But the new concept one that I'm referring to here is much more palatable to me than any of them.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Alder Wolf?
Thank you, Your Honor. And when we talk about, the future, I remember when we first acquired the land down at the Great River Landing back, about 2005 or so, and we have plans to hopefully expand and have a boardwalk. And Great River Landing is our future. So if we incorporate maybe some of that design or something. I mean, I could certainly see that because that is our future, but I don't even mind the little swirly letters on this now. I just think this is just night and day for me compared to, when it was a concept one, that just reminded me, and I asked, and several people agreed with me that it looked like it was the United Way logo. So,
Okay, so,
I like the direction we're going.
okay, Alder Jurassic,
Yeah, I just have one clarification. By replacing this logo, we are gonna be replacing this on all documents and
No, the seal is
seal. is-
completely separate.
All right,
That
that's why I wanna make
stays,
sure.
logos just kind of.
Yeah, that's why I make sure in some of the conversations, it sounded like we'd be replacing this one with that.
In some places, yes. So you're still gonna see the city seal on city vehicles. You're still gonna see it on your manhole covers. You're going to see it on very official documents. So when the mayor issues a proclamation, it will have the city seal on it. When we have a resolution, it will have the city seal. If we're sending our residents a letter, it will have the city logo. If you go to our website, it'll have the city logo and it will be reflective of the colors of the color palette of the
Okay.
new brand guide.
I just want to make sure, straight in my mind, that we are still keeping the
Yeah.
seal.
okay, so it sounds like we're not going to be able to approve a concept tonight, so does Meter and staff have enough information to move forward to the next step? Okay, and then do the counselors have anything they would like to add that we haven't covered, or staff? Alder Wolf?
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone who has participated and volunteered their time and their energy and their expertise for, volunteering to and working on all of this, because I know this is not easy to try to satisfy a whole bunch of people with a lot of different opinions, but thank you all for all your hard work on this. We're getting there. We're really close. So thank you.
Okay, Alder Stevens?
Just, and also to build off that, I know sometimes feedback, if you're like an artist, is not necessarily fun, but ultimately we all want that same goal, and you want to put out something that we're going to be proud of. And that's like, we're on that path. So don't take anything that we say here personally. It's, but I mean, it's, you don't know us, we really don't know you. We do appreciate the work that you're doing. So having this sort of interaction, I think, is crucial to getting a good end product.
Thank you. Okay, everyone good? All right, thank you so much for coming in today. We really appreciate it. And we're really excited about the process and moving forward and starting to see some concrete things once the designs are solidified. Okay, item 5 is closed session. To consider a motion to convene in closed session under 19.85, paragraph 1, paragraph G of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to be involved, specifically an employee payroll issue. If any action is required in open session as a result of the closed session, the council will reconvene in open session to take the necessary action and or continue on with the printed agenda.
Your Honor, I move that we go to closed session.
Second.
Motion has been made by Alder Stevens. It's been seconded by Alder Jurassic to go into closed session. The voting will be by roll call.
Larry Jurassic.
Here.
Dan Stevens,
Yes.
Leanne Stokes,
Yes.
Tom Smith,
Yes.
Diane Wolf. Stephen Knott.
Aye.
Thank you. The vote was unanimous. We are now in closed session and the time is 6:35.